guests love it. They take the pictures. Food doesn't get touched.
Yeah.
That meat is there, and it
gets oily
and stinky.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah, the cheese gets like all gross at the end of it.
Give me a chicken nugget topped with caviar, or give me a little Hawaiian roll with caviar topper that feels like a little high meets low moment.
Menu placement, I think, is really important, but menu personalization.
Yeah, for sure.
Another one.
Yeah, I agree.
Macaroni and cheese bars, mashed potato bars, salad bars, name the bars. It slows the line down like you've never seen before. Welcome back, ladies. I'm very excited about today's topic because it is a topic that is front of mind for me right now, especially being pregnant and all. I think about food all day long. And I know we've dabbled in the food conversation.
Yeah.
And we've, talked about some little moments where different trends have been relevant, but today I want to just hone in food and beverage trends, how it impacts our events, and really dive into the nitty gritty. So let's start with actually kind of flipping it on its head today.
Okay.
And let's talk about the things that we are over and the trends in food and beverage that we're cool with. Like, we've seen it, we're ready for it to sort of be past its prime and see some fresh food and beverage experiences
all right.
from. So
I love that.
I'm going to start with a food and beverage trend that I'm over is the build your own bars.
Ooh.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so I don't know how many macaroni and cheese bars, mashed potato bars, salad bars, you name the bars that I have seen, but it slows the line down like you've never seen before. And a hot button for us is always line management. We do not like lines. And if you do a build your own, you're inevitably going to get lines. I understand why it works for dietary. I understand why it works for, just ease of, menu planning. But I'm over it. So what do you guys have in your head that you're over?
Well, I have to agree with that really quickly because they also look lovely when they're first presented, and then they end up being a total disaster show. I mean, mashed potatoes everywhere, little mac and cheese bits, all the toppings all over the place.
Yes.
All over the floor.
It's never appetizing. So I agree with you on that. I think the other thing that I am really, really over is these really over the top cocktails. I kind of like the idea of going back to something a little more simplistic, a little more nostalgic. I think we're hitting that trend right now with nostalgia being back in the mix. As much as I love, something that's really creative and fun, I'm okay with it being a nice, very approachable, very recognizable cocktail. So maybe that's a personal thing for me as I lean into the nostalgia, but I really like that idea.
I like that. I like that a lot, especially because I think when you go to events, you don't want something that's like either super sugary. We also talked about that fake news story that we had with the crazy blue drink that had laxatives in it. So after that, I'm always fearful of drinks. But I would say the one thing that I'm over is the overdone charcuterie boards. I just don't, see them.
Everyone need a charcuterie board.
I know. They're like the hot trend, but then I see them and guests love it. They take the pictures. Food doesn't get touched.
Yeah.
That meat is there and it
gets oily
and stinky.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah, the cheese gets like all gross at the end of it. No one touches a bite of it. So then it's also, we waste so much food, and we're in the area of sustainability. We don't want to be wasting all of that food.
Well, and I think it's gone too far. Like, there's like a grazing board for every cuisine.
Yeah.
You have the dessert grazing board and the chicken nugget grazing board. And you see it. Yeah. The bagel board and the brunch board. And it's like
the butter board.
The butter boards. Although I can get on board with the butter
okay.
boards. I don't know.
Like.
I'm pro butter board.
Cheese girl. I like the cream cheese board with the bagels myself.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's just, we've seen it. It's been there. It's overdone.
Agreed.
So.
Absolutely. And then in regards to, the full menu experience, with a lot of things we sort of touch on our reception style events, is there anything when you're thinking about like a seated meal that you're like, enough is enough? I know, we've done some all vegan, meals, which I think work for a very particular group, but you really can't put that out to the masses. I had a Meatless Monday situation recently that just did not get good reviews on its survey, as you can imagine. People were hungry. Is there anything else from a seated event that you could think of that you're done with?
Yeah. I mean, I think honestly for me, it's like a really overly performative seated experience sometimes can feel a little overdone and a little bit like we've seen it. I mean, as much as I would love to have my soup poured from a soup tureen as I'm waiting to eat, it's like it can be a little bit much.
Especially with 500 people.
If you have 500 people and you're trying to kind of time it all, it can feel a little bit overwhelming. And I think too, it's like, again, I like that a bit more of an approachable feel. I want to be able to enjoy my food and obviously talk to the people I'm sitting with and really engage. And maybe there's a, speaker or an entertainment. And sometimes that can feel a little distracting in the moment. So that's kind of, I don't know, maybe we put a little pause on the overperformative service for tableside service.
I like that. On the side of the overperformative, I think that goes for the desserts too. Having an overperformative dessert or having too crazy of desserts. I really have been loving the trend of those kind of tiered tea-style desserts that are kind of smaller.
Yeah.
Give me the macarons. Give me all of that stuff that I can just take a bite of. Because when I get a huge slice of cake or a crazy chocolate fondue, I notice people aren't really going for that. People aren't eating that. People aren't wanting that. They want those easy bite size.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a great point.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that with the desserts, we see a lot of people just give you a dessert that's maybe a takeaway, and they don't actually do the dessert moment. I like people to get to stand up and re-network during dessert.
I agree.
So screw the takeaway, screw the, the petit fours or the big slice of cake or whatever. Like, give them a dessert reception.
Yeah.
Because at that point, not for nothing, but the seated dinners are sort of out, period. And that's a trend that I think we're post-COVID staying away from quite a bit, because people are really at these events to engage with each other. They don't want to be seated for too long. There's a moment for a seated dinner, and I think that's why I brought it up, because sometimes we do need to send some messaging across or have a particular type of entertainment that happens, or maybe, there's a fundraising element, who knows. But can it be 2 or 3 courses max, and then we can get back up and have our coffee together, maybe have an espresso bar, or have a little fun with the, branding elements you can do with coffee these days and that sort of thing, and get people. And then that's when you have all those neat little desserts that you mentioned, in a really pretty, visual format where you can decide, oh, I want to try this, I want to try that. But I'm not in the mood for chocolate, so don't put it on my plate and then get wasted.
Yeah.
Let me decide, what I want when I get to that area.
I agree. And you know what I also love is the idea of this progressive moment, right? You're in these incredible spaces with an incredible venue, and moving your group from space to space, and then, making the food and beverage flow, first, main, dessert, through that space. It has this progressive moment that feels really approachable, really informal, but also really fun, and obviously highlights the venue, which is we love. And I think you can do a lot more fun things with that. So I agree.
Yeah. And how many times have you've been seated at a seated dinner next to somebody that you just didn't have that much to talk about with, right?
And you're stuck. You're stuck the whole time,
twiddling your thumb.
Late to the party, and you ended up at the seat, and you were just like, "Damn, that is not who I wanted to spend 2 hours next to." So I think those reception style moments, whether it's at the beginning, the end, or for the entire event, are definitely where food and beverage gets consumed more, and also gets honestly, people appreciate what you're putting in front of them, because they have options. And options are important. Right now.
We love an option.
Always.
Absolutely. With that, knowing that we like reception style events and we like options with our food, I was talking to some of my colleagues recently, and they were most excited when they went to an event and they got to try something that they hadn't tried before, and the food experience was a little bit more on the, I don't want to call it an exotic side, but just a little bit more interesting. Maybe there was a topper or a flavor or something like that. What trends are you excited about, and what are you leaning into right now from food and beverage? I think, when I used to see like octopus on the menu, I would be like, whoa, I think you've pushed it too far. But now when we see octopus, we're like, cool, let's try it. Octopus 3 different ways, even better, right?
Yeah. I'm still a sucker for an elevated experience. Even though I just mentioned I really like things to be a little bit more approachable, I do think there's a way that you can do like a fun take on a caviar that feels fun and interesting. give me a chicken nugget topped with caviar, or give me a little Hawaiian roll with a caviar topper that feels like a little high meets low moment. I think those can be really great ways to get the conversation started. And I mean, who doesn't love a little bit of caviar, you know?
Seriously.
And it's so funny. I was just looking for some event inspiration, and I came across a roving caviar server.
Oh, love it.
So we've seen the roving oyster shucker for a while.
A little while.
A bit longer than most.
They've been around.
Last, typically. But, the roving caviar was a different take on it. It had a belt with the toppings. It was like a pancake that they served it on. There was like a creme fraiche that, spouted out of one thing. And then they, put the caviar scoop on top. And it was one bite. But super interesting for people and sort of build your own moment. With that, I think the roving cannoli bars are super hot.
Yep.
The roving charcuterie. I've seen roving mozzarella.
Burrata. I've seen this
Yeah.
burrata station where you can kind of, choose your own burrata adventure.
The cart that sort of moves through the room.
Love
right?
it.
So
Love it.
I think the roving food is not going anywhere. It's just getting more and more interesting what you could do and what you could make a roving experience out of. So that one I'm really into too, which sort of, made me think of it with the caviar as well. But Sam, what do you have in your head here?
I think there's been a huge trend, and as the Gen Zer of the team here,
Tell us.
I have to say, I think there's been a huge movement in mocktails.
Yeah.
Having those craft mocktails that take away that alcohol and maybe introduce, those electrolytes or, clean mushrooms like lion's mane or cordyceps.
Gotta love those aptogens.
Listen, I'll take my, I love my health and wellness over here. I will take what I can get when I get to an event. Because I think, when you're there and you're at an event like IMAX, which is crazy long hours, sometimes having those drink options that can fuel you rather than maybe dehydrate you a little bit, I think is great. And I think that's an option that I would love to see more in events.
Yeah, I do love the mocktail trend. I think it's not going anywhere, and getting creative with different approaches is really the key.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Again, I'm in the mocktail market right now. 9 months solid.
Yeah, you're really a lifer at this point.
Feels like it. But I can appreciate it more than I ever used to, right? Because all I'm drinking is the mocktails. And, I find myself when I go to an event and they have a mocktail option, they tend to be really sweet and really kind of overpowering the presentation versus the taste. And I'll end up with a soda water and I'll walk away from it because, you take 1 or 2 sips and you're like, this isn't really what I want in my palate. So I think, taking the mocktail concept, but giving us options. Don't just have one mocktail. Give us a few different mocktail. People like me, Gen Zers. Any category you want to put yourself in. But honestly, I was at a dinner a couple nights ago and I was with clients. We had more people not drinking than we had drinking, and it was a party for 10.
Yeah.
The typical let's order a bunch of bottles of wine for a bunch of us didn't even happen, even though it was sort of a wine focused restaurant. People were drinking ginger beer. I think that's a really great use of a mocktail experience. Or versions of Arnold Palmer's, and things like that. And then you could drop like edible flowers in them, right? And some of the things that make it fun, that don't have to have a strong flavor to them.
Yeah,
so you're not kind of putting off the rest of the meal from a flavor standpoint.
Yeah, love an interesting garnish. I think that's always a nice touch, something that you haven't kind of seen before, even on cocktail, even on a food service item. I mean, there's a million ways to do it.
Yeah,
absolutely. And another thing, plays off of food and beverage, but isn't directly it, is the menu experience, right? How do you lean into the menu, not just in advance, but actually present it to the audience, right? So I've seen a lot more menus in apps. People want to know what they're going to eat before they get to the event. So if they can check, hey, is there going to be this type of food, or my dietary piece is going to be covered, the dietary conversation can go all day. But if they can see in advance, hey, this is what I'm going to be served at this next, break session or lunch, then they can say, okay, great, I'm going to show up for it because I'm excited to eat that particular item, or I'm going to look for that item because maybe it was a room that has a lot of different stations and I'm not sure, if I'm going to have time to get to them all or something like that. So, menu placement, I think, is really important, but menu personalization.
Yeah, for sure.
Another one.
Yeah, I agree.
And I've seen a lot of really interesting things done with curating menus, putting interesting content on menus, QR codes, making menus interactive, having augmented reality on your menus, right? Like, let's bring your menu to life. Let's watch those chicken fingers rise from the page, right? But there's all kinds of interesting ways to do it. I don't know if you guys seen anything from a menu perspective that interests you right now.
Yeah, I've definitely seen the augmented reality, and it was used in such a cool way where it was an all-woman event, and they did it to where it was each of the person's star sign, and then they had a topper on the drink that had the QR code, and they would scan it and then lift their phone up, and it would create an entire augmented reality of a spinning wheel of the star signs.
I love that.
And they could pick one, and it would show them a strong woman in American history that had the same zodiac sign. And it would give them all the information about it, information about the cocktail, too, that they had ended up choosing. So it was a great way to, bring in that impactful moment of, this is an all-woman event. Let's bring in those strong women throughout history that have been pinpoints for us and been able to elevate us.
And I think that the tie into the astrological thing is really interesting because I feel like in the wellness space, that's also kind of a different sector that we're seeing a little bit more. Dress like your star sign, eat like your star sign. I mean, I think it's everywhere, but I think that kind of tie-in is really interesting and a different take. So I love that.
Yeah, the other one we did on a recent event was a invisible ink menu, where you actually had to use a object on the table to help see what was on your menu card.
Yeah.
We had a lot of smoke and sort of interesting things happening on the tablescape. So it just really created this cosmic effect, which sort of leads into that same concept. But it was an award-winning tablescape that happened at one of our events recently. So
no, I love that. I've also seen we did an event where it was a color wheel, and so you moved the color wheel, and your food aligned to the color that was being presented to you. So you kind of moved along the color wheel, and everything matched the menu and the element that you were eating. So it was kind of like a really fun, colorful way to have a different kind of menu experience. I think any way you can interact your guests to what they're eating, whether digitally or in a print version, is really impactful.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we have come up to our favorite time of our episode: confessions.
Yay!
So real or fake? I will turn it over to Sam. Let's get it started.
I like this one, so I'll go first. A client wanted to impress their employees with an unlimited Maryland crab boat tour, claiming that no one would finish the food. Within 30 minutes, the crab was completely gone. And I mean gone. Like no more crab on the boat. No getting any crab. And the guests were all arguing over the last crab leg. And the kitchen was frantically calling local seafood distributors to restock. The client ended up doubling the catering budget on the spot just to avoid a mutiny.
A crab mutiny, I should say.
Yeah. Real or fake?
I mean, that's tough. If you're on a crab boat and you don't have crab, like how do you live like
Seriously, you just go right over. Start fishing for some.
Start pulling up some traps. My gut says that if you're on a crab boat, you gotta have backup crab. You're not gonna run out of crab.
Right?
I don't think this is real. There's no way.
You think it's fake?
I think it's fake.
I mean, I'm kind of going to agree with you because I feel like you plan for the contingency.
You should, right?
And I feel like crab is something, too, that...
In Maryland,
it's a popular item. You got to have plenty of crab. I mean, what are you doing? So I'm going to say fake.
I'm sorry, guys. This one is real.
Really?
The crab was gone.
Oh,
they waddled off the boat.
Oh, no. The crabs are loose. Oh, man. All right, Ashley, give us a good one.
All right, so... I have a good one. So the catering team assured us that they'd set up a fresh organic salad station with beautiful edible flowers. What they didn't mention, tiny green caterpillars were still clinging to the lettuce leaves. A guest discovered one mid-bite, screamed, and caused the entire table to walk out. We had to refund part of the event costs because a live protein wasn't exactly part of the planned menu.
Ooh. I could see that happening.
I know.
Really see that happening. I mean, usually it's like there's their clamshell and the clam chowder, but a live animal that you actually took a bite out of, that's a really tough one.
Yeah.
I think that's real.
You think it's real?
Yeah, that is crazy. I feel like that's like from an episode of Naked and Afraid or something where you're like grabbing leaves and like getting your protein in with bugs.
Yeah.
That is crazy. That I feel like with all the experience I've seen with florals, that can be real.
Yeah.
That can happen.
Okay.
Bugs are real.
Yeah.
Actually, guys, it was fake.
Oh, all right. You got
So not this time.
Okay.
I'm 0 for 2 today.
I'm over all of them.
Yeah.
All right. I will go ahead and give mine. This client wanted a high energy entertainment at their product launch party. So they hired a bartender who could do fire tricks while making drinks. It looked amazing during rehearsal. But as the rehearsal started to come to an end, the smoke detectors started going off. We were minutes from the doors opening, and we had a full-blown smoke alarm and fire department show up to the event. The bartender said that they do this all the time and that they were hired to perform this item, so they were planning to continue on with the show once the guests arrived. As the fire department showed up, we were about 5 minutes away from the first buses, and we had to make sure that the sprinklers didn't add to the smoke before all of the guests arrived.
So, okay. So
That's a lot to unpack, right?
that's
there.
a lot to unpack. Not only are you spinning fire cocktails, you're worried about the sprinklers, and the fact that he wants to continue going after all that happened.
Determination.
I mean,
I
I give that to
appreciate it.
him. I think it's too much. I don't think that happened. No way.
I mean, that's crazy. Like, are drenched and he's still ready to like keep going? That can't be real.
Well, it's real.
Oh my gosh.
He flew in for the event. He felt very strongly about his performance being authentically what he does. And we were able to get the show on the road. We had great communication with our transportation teams, stalled a few minutes just to give us the time we needed to reset as best we could. Fortunately, we had sort of a reveal moment at the event, so this was happening sort of behind the reveal. So the front area where the cocktail hour happened, we had a little more time,
less smoky.
yeah, a little less chaos, a little more time to let the guests extend their cocktail hour a touch before they moved into the reception area where the flare happened.
Wow.
Yeah, but as much as you have your COIs and you make your plans, it's definitely a contingency plan, a risk management plan, everything all in one. And when the fire department really does show up, you're in for an exciting event. We've talked about some food trends that are, in our opinion, trending. We've talked about some that are not trending. But let's do a quick kind of rapid fire round.
Ooh, okay.
About what's trending or trash.
Ooh, trend or
Okay.
trash. I love this.
So you get to pick trend or trash. And I will just kind of quickly call out a few and let you guys answer.
Let's do it.
Okay, first up, tableside activations. So we're talking live mozzarella making, Caesar salad, pinwheel cheese.
Like a bananas Foster, if you will.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm going to say trend.
I'm gonna say trend. I like it. Let's do it.
yeah,
for
I
that.
think it's a fun experience.
Next up, cannabis infused in beverages.
Ooh,
Wellness girl, trend.
I'm gonna say trash.
Okay.
I'm gonna say trash, and I
There's
think
a lot of corporate events.
I think that's the reason. I think it's a little controversial, and you kind of teeter between: is it CBD, is it THC? What are we walking away with?
Yeah.
So
How are we walking away from this drink? A little woozy.
Upcycled and food waste dining.
I'm gonna say trend.
I think it's a trend too.
I think it's a trend just because it is something that helps sustainability.
I think sustainability is such a strong trend. And
Yeah.
less about where's the food going to go after it leaves our event. It's a little bit more about how are we going to maybe use the same menu for Group A and Group B down the hall from each other, and how the hotels are kind of positioning
Yeah, I think it's
menus
great.
versus pick what you want. Micro portions and negative space. Trend or trash?
I'm gonna say
Trash.
I'm gonna say trash too. I'm a hunger girl.
Yeah,
I need to eat.
Give me the French fries.
Plate with one little dauble on it.
And if I like that bite, I want 2 more of those bites.
I know.
Yeah.
And it might be pretty, but I'm
And it's going to cost $100.
Yeah, exactly.
all right. Open flame cooking stations.
Ooh.
I'm going to go trend. I like an open flame.
I'm
I
gonna
think
go-
it's a fun experience.
I'm gonna go trash. I don't know. I just feel like there's too much liability there.
I see both sides, but I do like a flame broiled on top or something like that, where you use like a flame gun. Maybe.
Yeah, a nice creme
That's
brulee
maybe-
top.
There's a way to make it happen.
Okay.
All right, one more. Video mapping dining experiences.
Ooh, trend.
I'm going to say
I like
trends.
technology.
Yeah. Again,
We're in
it's
a
like
digital age.
it goes back to that interactive element. I think people enjoy having an experience and they don't just want to eat the food, they want to experience it too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Trend
So
all day.
Projecting on the tables, making it part of the storytelling. For
Love
the
it.
food. All right, we're here for it. Sounds good. All right, let's dive into our next one. We're going to do something different this time we have not done before as we sort of close out our food and beverage conversation today and really talk about how food and beverage is so important in the messaging that we're trying to accomplish in an event, right? And, when we think about a brand or a particular company that we're working with, how can we make sure that the food and beverage aligns with that company or that brand? So I'm going to share sort of a description of a type of company and that we may be, planning an event for. And I would love for you guys to tell me what food and beverage trend might make most sense for that particular brand.
Ooh, okay. This is fun. I like this.
Okay. So let's start with a high-end retailer known for impeccable customer service, curated fashion, and seamless shopping experiences that blends luxury with approachability. So department store-esque.
Okay. I'm going to say, even though we kind of trashed it in the last episode, in the last segment, I'm going to say the micro foods.
Ooh, bringing in the trend.
I know. And I hate to say that, but I think something like that where it's high end and meticulous and you can really kind of execute a perfect bite might be a winner.
I like that. I'm going to say from earlier in our segment, we talked about the caviar with the chicken nugget.
Ooh.
I'm going to go that. It's approachable, but it gives you that high-end touch.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I like it.
I like it too. I think also the immersive dining experiences, just because you could lean into like the personal shopping experience that could happen when you go to like a bigger department store that has that luxury feel to it. So how can we sort of personalize the food and beverage experience and have this sort of immersive element to
Love that.
the dining? So
Yeah. All right.
let's do another brand or type of company that we may partner with someday, of course. A fitness brand that's more than just workouts. It's a lifestyle, fostering a dedicated community through immersive, tech-driven experiences that keep people motivated. What food and beverage trend makes the most sense for this brand?
I like this one. I'm going to say the mocktails, the wellness drinks. Bring in those wellness drinks. Bring in the cordyceps, the mushroom-based coffees. Those things are all great, and I think really hit that alignment right there of giving that high performance, but also giving in that wellness and health focus.
I'm going to pivot a little. I'm going to say a matcha experience.
Ooh.
I could see that
I
being
like
really, really cool with a group like this. Very much kind of that, mindful moment, with the matcha making, but then also, you have the strawberry matchas and the lavender matchas, and you can kind of play off of that. A matcha bar. I think I'm going to go matcha bar.
Yeah.
All the way.
Funny because we trashed the matcha bar or the bars.
What's different than a kombucha bar? But
Yeah.
it's like
A little bit of health bar, something different.
Yeah, I like that. I think the other thing I was thinking about was like high protein, like performance foods, right? So
Ooh, yeah.
things that are going to be a little bit more, energy builders. Obviously some of the things you guys mentioned are important, but we need to feed them something substantial, right? So
Definitely.
let's give them some like heavy protein that gets them, excited to participate in whatever the lifestyle.
Yeah, love
elements
that.
that we bring into the event are.
Yeah,
I like
love that.
Cool. All right, let's do one more. A brand that turns shopping into an experience, blending eclectic bohemian style and curated home goods and fashion that feel both artistic and aspirational. So we're going bohemian vibes, and we're doing a lifestyle brand that has home and fashion.
I like this. I'm going to pull a U, and I'm going to bring up something that I trashed.
Uh-oh, she's eating her words.
I'm eating my words, and I'm pulling a U. A butterboard. I think a bread and butter board, like have that artisan style, like the sourdough, the wheat bread. Give me a good French baguette in there. And then all the different types of butters. Give me a honey butter, a lavender butter, all that type to kind of bring in that eclectic feel.
I'm going to go play with your food kind of vibe. I think it's something where you could create an artistic interpretation with your food.
Yeah.
And to create that kind of conversational moment. I think that could be really fun. So I don't know if it would look like, designing your own plate, maybe designing the structure of the components that are coming together on the plate, but something really playful where you get to be involved in the creation on your plate.
Yeah, we've done some events where it's been sort of a blank canvas that gets served in front of you and the materials, and then you sort of get to have a little bit of an artistic moment
Yes,
with your food,
yes.
especially dessert course.
Love that.
Well, for that, that also reminded me of a event I did a few years back where I had I was serving 600 engineers.
Ooh.
Off track here, but I want to tell it.
That's a tough crowd.
Yeah.
Tough crowd. So they were meat and potatoes guys, and we knew that, but we wanted to make it interesting, and we also wanted to make it approachable. So we actually, for our Caesar salad course, it was a Caesar salad, right? Something that meat and potatoes guys might like. But we served each salad with a mini cheese grater and a piece of Parmesan cheese.
Love that.
So they got to like grind their own cheese on top of their salad and have this sort of like engineer moment in the gala. And it went over really, really well. It was hard to top the next year. In fact.
Yeah, I was gonna say. How do you beat
have
that?
them cut their own cow or something.
Right? All right. Well, we've been talking about food all day. I'm starving.
It's time for lunch.
Damn it.
Time for lunch.